Hello, BookTube. Today I'd like to do the mid-year book freakout tag. This was created by BiblioAtlas, and I was tagged by Ernest Lee Eston, and I'll put links to both below. The first question is, what was the best book of the year? This is difficult, and I don't have a copy here to show you. It was How to Live or a Life of Montaigne by Sarah Bakewell. I've read her other things, The Paris Cafe about Sartre. I really like her stuff. In fact, I'm going to go out and find a decent copy of Montaigne and reread that. Best sequel this year. That would, for me, have been Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Sea Monsters. We had to replace our copies at the library I work in because they have been worn out with love, I guess. And I bought a new set to replace them, and I thought, well, I've never read these. So I read the first two, and I really, really enjoyed them, the Riordan books. I think I watched one of the films with my kids and thought it was fun, but I mean, I really liked the books. So number 3, new release I haven't read but want to. And this is because it's at my library and it goes out before I get a chance to read it myself, but I'll get to it. And that's Donna Leon's Guido Brunetti Mystery, Earthly Remains. I've read a lot in this series. I've read some of her essays. I really, really like her. I think she's been able to maintain the character through an awful lot of books. Most anticipated release of the second half of the year. That would have to be the Louis L'Amour Lost Treasures Volume 1. Unfinished manuscripts, mysterious stories, and lost notes from one of the world's most popular novelists, which was done with his son, Beau L'Amour. Louis been passed away a long time ago. I've discussed a little bit of this with some people, and it reminds me of the Christopher Tolkien thing, where you keep releasing the things that a parent had created, which is a little odd, but then again, I have to admit I'm excited to see what Beau L'Amour has been able to come up with, and I like the Christopher Tolkien stuff too. So. The biggest disappointment would be The Hunter by John Lescroart. This here, I've never really read his stuff. And I love thrillers, and it looked like it would be exciting to me, but just the main character isn't engaging. It seems like there's no depth to it. So, at least from my perspective, it was a bit of a disappointment, because I would have, even though he's not a new writer, for me he would have been a new writer in a genre I enjoy. So I had hopes for this book, and maybe some of the others are better, but that was a bit of a disappointment. The biggest surprise was this book here. There's been a couple surprises this year, but this is the one I chose. And that would be Caldecott & Co. Notes on Books and Pictures by Maurice Sendak. This is a collection of essays or speeches. It came out in 1988. It's published, the Noonday Press, Michael D. Capua Books, Farrar, Straus and Giroux. Sendak designed that little thing. It's a collection of short pieces, a lot of them about book illustrators I knew nothing about. This thing's a little bit of an education. He talks about music and listening to music while he was drawing. He talks about Mother Goose, Randolph Caldecott, of course, who's a part of the title here, Hans Christian Andersen, Adalbert Stifter, George MacDonald, Lothar Meggendorfer, Beatrix Potter, Winsor McKay, Maxfield Parrish, Claude Lavatte Fraser, Jean de Brunoff, Walt Disney, Edward Artisane, Margaret Wise Brown and Jean Charlotte, Eric Legvad, Lou Myers. I mean, I didn't have high expectations. I jumped into this book because of the combination of the words Caldecott and Sendak, and I was really, really happy with it. It's a good book if you can find it around. I don't know if it's still in print, but if you can find it around, it would be worth reading if you're interested in children's literature, music and literature, and then and illustration. Favorite new author. This one I would have never expected. I accidentally found a biography, and I wrote it down here, The Private World of Georgette Heyer by Jane Aiken Hodge. And I don't have it because when I got done with it, someone at my library saw me with it and got all excited. And I really enjoyed it. I didn't know who she was. I'm sure I've seen her books around because they're ubiquitous, but I really liked the biography, and it was an old copy that I just found by accident and started to read and couldn't put down. Well, I got to talk, and then come to find out 5, 6, 7 people all really are into Georgette Heyer. So somebody gave me a real beater of a paperback, probably because they didn't want me to touch their good copies. So anyway, continuing on with Georgette Heyer, the beat up paperback. A Civil Contract. See, a piece of it comes off in my hand. And I'm trying to be careful so I don't ruin this thing, because it's not mine. I borrowed it. About 160 pages into this thing. The characters are fantastic. The story moves well. The setting, the scene, I'm reading a Regency romance and loving it. So, yeah, I will read more. I haven't gotten the ending. The ending sometimes can be a disappointment in books. Just can't see it happening here. This author knew how to write. Yeah, Georgette Heyer, Civil Contract. And I hope it survives long enough for me to get it back to the person who let me borrow it. When will this paperback come out? I'm almost afraid to open it. Well, the copyright's from 1961, and the paperback's from 89. It shouldn't be that rough, but it's probably been read quite a few times. So, newest favorite character. Well, actually, the newest favorite character is from A Civil Contract, and that's Mr. Chawleigh. He is the father of the young woman who marries the main character. The main character is of the English nobility, and his father had run through the family fortune, and to save the manor house and the lands and everything else, the main character marries Mr. Chawleigh's daughter, because Mr. Chawleigh is a very successful businessman, self-made man. And he doesn't have all the polish, if you will, of the upper crust. But how he interacts and how it allows you to see the other characters through Mr. Chawleigh is just wonderful. So I really like him. Book that made me cry. So far this year, nothing. Book that made me happy. Well, that would have to be this. I hope you can see it here. This is the book, A Cover-to-Cover Exploration of the Most Powerful Object of Our Time by Keith Houston. And I read a lot of books about books, just part of my profession. And I've worked with some very old books. Usually they rehash a lot of the same old material. This book was a little different, I felt, in that he was very effective in showing that the modern book is just that. This modern book that I'm holding in my hands is not produced, put together, made the same way as books used to be. Hopefully it doesn't have the acid paper. But yeah, this was very, very successful, very well done, I believe. Favorite book to film adaptation? Not a big movie guy. I do like them, but I don't spend a lot of time with them. So I'm going to actually go with something older. And again, this is one I don't have. I'll try to find a picture to put up in the corner. It's a book I didn't know about. And it's by Ray Bradbury. And it's called Green Shadows, White Whale. And it's about his time with John Huston and writing the script for Moby Dick. And it was a very disturbing book. John Huston, I didn't realize just what a complete scoundrel he was. And the way that Bradbury describes the Irish, the way he tells the story, just a really, really good book. So, and has a connection, obviously, the background is they're working on the classic movie Moby Dick. So I would have to say that's as close to answering that question as I can get. Okay, and favorite video I've done this year. Well, the video we did was based on this. David McCullough, The Greater Journey, Americans in Paris. And we went over, by we, I mean my family and I, went over to St. Gaudens. Here's St. Gaudens right there. A national site over in Cornish, New Hampshire. So we filmed part of the ride over. We got on site and we filmed the Farragut Memorial, Shaw Memorial, Adams Memorial, a lot of his sculptures. My favorite being the Robert Louis Stevenson. And so that was the most fun to do. It was a lot of work editing it. So that would be my favorite video. The most beautiful book I've bought or received this year. That was actually a pretty easy choice. This is the book. And it's called Meetings with Remarkable Manuscripts by Christopher DeHamel. It's a treasure. Try to let you see some illustrations. And he basically is going out to do exactly what the title says. He's meeting remarkable manuscripts. I can just show you pictures all day long. The book is put together beautifully. So, in the course of a long career at Sotheby's, Christopher DeHamel has cataloged more illuminated manuscripts in over a wider range than any person alive, and possibly more than any individual ever has. Since 2000, he's been a fellow and librarian of Corpus Christi College, Cambridge. The Parker Library in his care includes many of the earliest manuscripts in the English language and history. He's a fellow of the Society of Antiquaries and Royal Historical Society. Yeah, this is just a stunning book. should give you the publisher's name since they did such a beautiful job. So it's Alan Lane, an imprint of Penguin Books, and this is a good read. You go around with him and you meet these manuscripts. I can give you some names of what they are. So chapter 1 is the Gospels of St. Augustine. The second chapter is the Codex Amiatinus. Chapter 3, the Book of Kells. Chapter 4, the Leiden Aratea. Excuse me. The 5 is the Morgan Beatus. Chapter 6 is Hugo Pictor. Chapter 7, the Copenhagen Psalter. Chapter 8 is the Carmina Burana. Chapter 9 is the Hours of Jean de Navarre. Chapter 10 is the Hangwork Chaucer. Chapter 11 is the Visconti Semideus. And chapter 12 is the Spinola Hours. There's great bibliography, notes, there's index to the manuscripts, there's index to the people. If you have here's Goring inspecting a painting under consideration for his private Nazi art collection. There's just some great stories in this. So it is this year's definitely the most beautiful book. And finally, question 15, a book I need to read by the end of the year. Because it's been taking me all year to read it. And I am struggling mightily. It is this 2-volume set. Some of you heard me say before what I'm going through to try to read this. It's called Berlioz in the Romantic Century by Jacques Berzon. This is the third edition. It was Columbia University Press. It was published in 2 volumes. I'm on the first volume. I've read Jacques Berzon before. I like his writing. But I don't know if it's the musical knowledge you required. I mean, I'm listening to the music while I read it. A little over my head, but I'm not ready to go into the dramatic symphony, Romeo and Juliet. And we'll just, I'm hoping to have it done by the end of the year. I mean, I don't read it every night. But I keep plugging away at it because I do have a feeling it'll be worth it once I'm done. And maybe a reread in a couple of years would go a little smoother. But every once in a while you have to work your way through a work. So that would be the book I need to read by the end of the year. So I'd like to tag anyone out there who hasn't done this tag. And I think it was well written and it was fun to work through, and I thank Biblio Atlas for creating it, and Ernest Lee Eston for tagging it. Thank you, BookTube.